Did you know that Africa is the birthplace of humanity, civilization, and knowledge? Yet, for centuries, myths have erased its contributions to science, philosophy, and governance. This documentary uncovers the truth behind Africa's misunderstood history. Let's start with one of the most persistent myths, the claim that Africans didn't build Great Zimbabwe. Constructed entirely by Bantu-speaking Africans between 1100 and 1450 CE, Great Zimbabwe was a thriving city and a center of trade. The myth that it was built by outsiders was debunked in 1929 by archaeologist Gertrude Cotton Thompson. Her findings proved that Great Zimbabwe was an African achievement. Another myth is that Africa had no civilizations. This couldn't be further from the truth. The Kingdom of Kongo, the Ashanti Empire, and the Sokoto Caliphate were major centralized states with written laws, trade networks, and urban centers. The Kingdom of Kongo, which existed from 1390 to 1914, was a sophisticated society with a complex political structure. The Ashanti Empire, flourishing from 1670 to 1896, was known for its gold wealth and intricate governance. The Sokoto Caliphate, established in 1804, was a powerful Islamic state. These civilizations were not isolated, they engaged in international trade. Manso Musa, ruler of the Mali Empire in the 14th century, is famous for his pilgrimage to Mecca, during which he distributed so much gold that it disrupted economies along his route. Another myth is that Africa was always poor. Pre-colonial Africa had wealthy elites and complex economies. The Wolof philosopher Kokbama, who lived in the 15th century, authored 5,000 maxims against tyranny, demonstrating the intellectual richness of African societies. Africa's philosophical contributions are often overlooked. Sarah Jacob, a 17th-century Ethiopian thinker, wrote the philosophical treatise Atata, one of Africa's earliest known philosophical works. Yet, European scholars dismissed African philosophy, claiming it didn't exist. The term tribe is another European invention, used to categorize non-European peoples as primitive. This term has no origin in African languages and was used to justify colonialism and racial hierarchy. The Hamitic hypothesis claimed that white Caucasians built African civilizations. This racist theory was debunked in 1929, but its legacy persists. No evidence supports the Hamitic hypothesis. All major African achievements were by indigenous black Africans. Africa's scientific contributions are equally significant. African hunter-gatherers in the Great Lakes region invented mathematics and astronomy 30,000 years before Christ. They carved knowledge onto animal bones, now preserved in the Natural History Museum in Brussels. The Saharan Neolithic peoples created one of the first agricultural revolutions in human history, developing irrigation and crop cultivation independently of Eurasia. Africa is the birthplace of humanity. Homo habilis, Homo erectus, and Homo sapiens all evolved in Africa, specifically in the Ojue Valley and Lake Turkana. Despite this, European scholars distorted African history to justify colonialism. The myths they perpetuated were used to justify slavery and racial hierarchy. Modern African scholars have reclaimed African history, emphasizing Africa's contributions to global thought. Sites like Great Zimbabwe, Timbuktu, and Kemet are now major tourist attractions, drawing global interest to Africa's ancient legacy. African universities teach corrected African history, replacing colonial narratives with indigenous perspectives. The African Union and Pan-Africanist movements use historical truth to advocate for economic independence and cultural sovereignty. Debunking these myths has strengthened African national identities, with countries like Zimbabwe, Mali, and Ethiopia celebrating their pre-colonial heritage as symbols of resistance and pride. Africa's contributions to mathematics, astronomy, philosophy, and governance have influenced global thought, yet they remain under-recognized in Western education systems. The rejection of myths like the Hamitic hypothesis and tribal Africa has reshaped global historiography, proving that African civilizations were equal or superior to many European ones. The suppression of African philosophy and science was used to maintain the myth of European superiority. They claimed that dark-skinned Africans sold other dark-skinned Africans was a colonial distortion used to minimize European culpability in the slave trade. In reality, African merchants were co-opted by European traders, not the primary drivers. The term tribe was invented in Europe to dehumanize Africans, yet it remains widely used in Western media and academia. The invisibility of African science, such as the 30,000-year-old mathematical carvings, was suppressed to maintain the myth of European scientific superiority. Africa's Neolithic Sahara Revolution and its contributions to mathematics, astronomy, and medicine are now being recognized. Africa is the birthplace of humanity, civilization, and knowledge. It's time to challenge Eurocentric narratives and celebrate Africa's rich legacy. Let's continue to uncover the truth and rewrite history.